Okay, well, here we are. Need to wait for some people to join so I can do my camera sound test and everything. It's all a bit last minute, so I don't know how long it's going to take people to join, but we shall see. I hope it sent out notifications to let people know, because I haven't got one, and I usually get one through my phone. I mean, it says I'm streaming now, so I am streaming. Whether or not there are going to be people here or not, we shall wait and see. I did put out a thing saying that I was going to be streaming at 10, so we have people. Hello, Dean and Cybernova. Right, you guys, first of all, and Curtis. Look, right, so first of all, can you all hear me fine? Just simple yes or no's will do. Just need to make sure that you can all hear me, first of all. Yes? Okay, you can all hear me. Okay, so can you see me on Facecam? That's coming through fine? Okay, and lastly here, Bessie cam with the black sheet. You can all see that as well. Brilliant. Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to my, well, technically this is a custom figure showcase because I'm not actually going to be doing a building thing as I would in a live from the workshop. However, I am live, and technically I'm in what is hopefully soon going to become my sort of workshop area. So it's a live stream from the workshop. Now, under here we have Bessie on Bessie cam, but I'm not going to reveal her just yet because I want to do a little bit of talking, not too much, don't worry, because I wanted to give you a little bit of background about this project and why I decided to do it. So, some of you may be aware, some of you may not be aware, in which case this will be an interesting bit of info for you. Over the years on the internet, there has been floating around a picture of a what would seem to be a 5-inch scale version of Bessie with the third Doctor from, I think, the Green Death or Death to the Daleks, one of those two figures, sat in it. Now, whether this was real or not has always been debated and things like that. But obviously, if it were real, it meant that a 5-inch Bessie would have been on the cards at some point. So I got in touch with my old chum Al Jawar over at Character Options, and he confirmed that the picture is indeed real. Now, I should make it clear as well, I'm not going to put the picture up in this live stream, and I'm also not going to post it anywhere because potential legal reasons. But the picture is out there. It does exist. A prototype was made. Now, obviously, it wasn't produced for undisclosed reasons. If I were to speculate, and this is purely my own speculation, I would hazard a guess that it was one of budget, because when you consider just the size of it, this would have been around, going by the figure that was in the picture, probably around 2010 area. So I would assume that they didn't have the budget to do it at the time. Obviously, for obvious reasons, back then they had more budget. Again, I would speculate that means we are highly unlikely ever to see it these days, just purely because we know the budget is smaller. So it is a shame. It is a shame that we're not going to get it. But it does mean that Bessie was prototyped at some point. And to all intents and purposes, the prototype is out there somewhere. But here's a bit of intrigue. Nobody knows where it is. Or at least that is to say, its current whereabouts are unknown. It's widely believed that it's ended up in a private collection. Which well, on the one hand, as a collector, part of me is going, it should be in my private collection. But on the other hand, if it's ended up in a private collection, I am pleased to know that, because it means it's in safe hands. It is, if it is this is a one-off prototype, I'm glad to know it didn't just get thrown away. So if you are the person who has it, please drop me a message on Twitter and things like that. If you don't want to be you don't want to come out public or anything like that, I assure you that I won't I won't reveal that you've messaged me or anything like that. But I'd just be intrigued to know if whoever does have it, and just maybe get some more pictures of it, again, just purely for my own reference and things like that. It would be interesting to see if it what it actually looks like, and get a bit more of a better look of it. But yes, so I thought I would just give you all that little bit of information about this project. But obviously, for that reason, the fact that we were never going to get a 5-inch version, I decided that I would take a crack at making one myself. So she is not 100% accurate. She is quite basic in appearance, but here she is. And the live stream is just frozen. No, it hasn't. There it is. So here is my Bessie. I have one of my 3rd Doctor figures in place, so you can see the scale of her, or at least you can get a better idea. I'm just having to make sure I'm not moving her too far out of frame, because I'm working on a slight camera delay. So 3D printed in near enough 5-inch scale. It is not perfect, and as I said, she is not 100% accurate. There's lots of areas and things like that where she isn't entirely in scale. There's some bits. So for example, if I turn it round so you can see from the front, the windscreen struts, for example, should be parallel, not pointed inwards. But again, that's just the way that the models come out. But obviously, I've given her all the details that I could. So obviously lamps, things like that. You've got the extended bonnet, which I'll come back to in a minute. Windscreens, rear view mirror, horn. If we turn around, you can see she's also got the little handbrake on this side, steering wheel, gear sticks in there. I've also, which I haven't actually fully painted, but she's also got some gauges and things like that are in there. The rear wheel is on there, the rear bumper's on there. The cover for the cover, whatever you want to call it, I will say that is only all I've done for that one. I've made is the struts for it. The actual canvas roll is a remix of a 3D print, which I should have looked up. I did check that it is out ready for people to remix. It was made by, if you give me one moment to find it. Is that the one, or is it a different one? That is the one. So this was on Pin Shape. It was Bedroll, made by Richard Rose. It is on there as CC Attribution Remix. So big shout out to him for making that and putting giving that. It's saved a huge amount of time for me doing that side of things. Obviously, as we come around as well, you've got the little battery on the side as well here. And then you come back around to the front again. Obviously, the lamps and things like that are all on there as well. So her wheels do roll slightly. They're not great. They're a little bit stiff in places. And also, the way I've glued her, unfortunately, she's got a bit of a tilt on her. And now, the other thing, because of this is something which I've had to design myself, and I've had to sort of design it from scratch. I've used a few reference pictures and things like that. She doesn't actually fit any 5-inch figures, or at least she does, but they've got to be put in a weird position. So if I use the 3rd Doctor as an example, he's got to properly have his legs splayed out, and even then with the steering wheel, it's difficult to get it in place. They will sit in there, but it's the thing is, it's meant to be a static model. It's not meant to be something that the figures are meant to fit into and be interactive and things like that. I did just want it as a static model piece. So yeah, I'm pretty pleased with the overall outcome, and it will still look great on the shelves. She doesn't have things like the overdrive or anti-theft device or anything. Now, again, there's lots of things like this that I haven't added on, just purely because I wasn't that fussed about doing it hyper detailed. And there is also already on I think CG Trader, there is a hyper realistic version that was made in for 1:6 scale printing. So You know, if people do want a really realistic version to print, obviously there's already one out there, which is part of the reason why I wanted to do a slightly more simplified version, because obviously someone's already done a really realistic one. But again, you know, I've made this so if people wanted to add on their own other little things and little details, they can. I just wanted to do a very, very basic model for people to have in their, you know, in their collections. Now, obviously, I mentioned at the start, I've just got to move it back into frame. The frame's on the computer's the other way around. That's what's throwing me out. So obviously the extended bonnet. Now, what this actually is quite literally an extension. You might just be able to see here, there's a slight join line, because effectively this part of the bonnet from the front is a separate printed piece. And so what I've done is I've modelled the bonnet up to a point. I have then also made, which I haven't got printed out, but there's a separate grill piece to do the shorter bonnet version. Obviously, if you want to do the longer, if people wanted to do the longer bonnet version, this piece is here. I've just realised I'm saying I've got all of these pieces made. I should point out I am planning to put these files up and available for people to download and make themselves. I should have said that earlier on. I apologise, I didn't. Anyway, but yeah, so if you want to make one of these yourself, the files will be available. So yeah, we've got it can be made shorter bonnet or longer bonnet. I've made the different pieces for that. I will say the seats that you see here with the you know, with the leather upholstery and things like that. What I've done for these is the actual leather upholstery on the seat has been printed, and then I've used a bit of Milliput to go around the edges. Now, what I'm actually doing, I want to give a big shout out here to Scott over at Gallifrey Customs. He's actually going to go and model up the leather upholstery for me. And so, excuse me, those will be the ones that will be released as part of the files. I'm also going to go back to the drawing board slightly on this and make some little updates. So, firstly, if I turn it over, you can see on the base, it is just a very simplified base. I'm actually going to put a bit of a chassis going from the front to the back, just so that bit can all be printed in one piece if people want to. And then the other thing that I'm going to do is to go back with the extended bonnet. I'm not going to change the way it looks, but I'm going to add in a sort of slight peg arrangement to the extended bonnet and to the grill plate that will fit in to have the shorter bonnet version. So people, if they want to print it and interchange them, they'll be able to do that. I've obviously glued this on. If people want to glue it on and put it all together, they can do. But I thought I'd go back and add in that little change and rearrangement, just purely so again people have got a bit of choice and a bit of variety, you know, for how it works and to, you know, to give her the different appearances and things like that. So the files for this, I was planning on putting them up today, but to get the seats done and to make the changes to the bonnet piece, and also one or two other little areas that I've, you know, since putting it together I can fix, because obviously this is very much a prototype of my model. I'm actually going to put the files up next Sunday, so that will be, if you bear in mind, if you give me a second, that'll be the 2nd of October. They'll be going up onto Thingiverse again for anyone who wants to print them and make their own one. I have had a couple of requests about whether I'm going to do kits of these to sell. I am not at present time. Sorry, I'm not used to talking this much. I'm not at present time. It is something which I'm considering, but purely out of the amount of time it takes to print this model, amongst, you know, my other commitments, such as, you know, when I'm at work during the day, I've got other things to print, people's orders from eBay, etc., things like that. It just won't be feasible at the current time for me to be able to do kits of this for sale. But it is something which I know people would want. It is something which I would like to be able to produce for people, even if it's only just one kit every 6 months or something like that to start with. It is something that I want to do. But again, you know, as I've said to those people, I'm not planning on doing that at present time. But when these files go up on Thingiverse, they will be available for anyone up there to download. And there are plenty of printing services out there that could print it for you at a cost. So it's it's something which I would really love to do as a model kit, because I know it would be popular. But again, you know, it's not feasible, unfortunately, at the moment. But you know, as a kit, I'm pretty pleased with it. As a model, I'm pretty pleased with it. It's not without its smaller faults, but it has come out really well, and it's definitely going to look great on my shelves alongside the third Doctor figure. I might go back and try and do a couple of other little changes. Like I said, like if I could get it to fit the figures, I would. But I think it's still the problem with fitting the figures as well. Actually, I have to say, is to get the sort of scale of this right. And even then, she's not entirely in scale. To get the scale just right, I've had to do it compared to various figures. So I think I primarily used the third Doctor, a Brigadier figure, and also a seventh Doctor, obviously because Bessie appears in Battlefield. And the problem is that none of the figures are quite sort of exactly in scale to the actual actor, as it were. So I've had to go sort of down a general route. So ironically, she won't fit the third Doctor figure very easily, but I'm pretty sure she would accommodate a seventh Doctor figure quite easily. So it's a tricky thing to get right, and it's a tricky thing to fit the figures into, again, just purely because they don't necessarily fit well. I mean, I think the thing is, I probably could, if I tried now, I could fit the third Doctor in there. But if his feet are flat on the floor, it means that he's sitting way above the seat. So it's, yeah, and there's not a huge amount of space left over to be able to push his feet a bit further forward as well. So it is, you know, as I said, this isn't made to be played with, as it were. You know, like I said, it's got rolling wheels and things like that. But, you know, that was just a necessity of ease for the way I put it together. Why haven't we had an official release? Go back to the start of this live stream. I've already gone over that earlier. Funnily enough, I appreciate some people are going to be a bit late into this, but I did actually go into that earlier. If you haven't seen that bit, it's well worth it's well worth going into. I'm dribbling everywhere. Yeah, I mean, there's not really a huge amount left for me to say about the model itself. You know, I've sort of explained it and things like that. So I'm happy to take any questions about the model, about the files and things like that. I don't want to turn this into just a general, you know, a general Q&A of saying, you know, are you ever going to make this? Are you ever going to make that? You know, actually talking about the show and things like that. It's about the model. So if you've got any questions about the model, please ask them now, and I will do my best to address. Because again, this live stream was a bit last minute, so I've not really got a set time of when I can start this and end it. If nobody's got any questions, I will end it. If they've got questions about the model, then I'll go over them. Are there any other loose accessories on the car? There aren't any loose accessories. They are all glued into place. The wheels are the only thing that move. Again, there's probably ways that people could make things move, but you know, again, it's meant to be a static model, so I you know, there was only a few bits I wanted to make move, and even then, the wheels were just kind of, they move just purely because it was the easiest way to to make them. You know, that's pretty much it. Perhaps having more space in the footwear allowed to accommodate figures more effectively, but understandably there are limits. Unfortunately, there are limits. There's really not a lot of space to make space in the footwell, if that makes sense, because I mean, already the interior of the footwell is coming to almost the front of this, and even if I put a bit more space underneath, you're only going to get about that much more space in there. It's really not going to be enough to accommodate the figures. It is something which I'm going to go back and try and do, but I'm not going to say I'm going to be able to do it, because I purely don't know. But it is something that I do want to try and see if I can, try and do it. How do you do that on the 3D printer? I thought you'd only print in one color. I did it. So this was all white PLA plastic. I have only printed in one color. This is, I've painted this myself, I should say. You know, everything's been painted. It was printed, and then I've painted it. You know, that's pretty much it. So it's again, labor of love, but it's something that's come out well. Are you going to make the Humobile? Again, try and keep it to this model, but for the sake of it, Humobile model already exists on the 3D printing Doctor Who site. Somebody's already done that. That is probably one, again, I would like to try and print and get printed. But it would be nice to have them both. I am contemplating printing another Bessie just purely to have the shorter bonnet version, but I don't know. This one really did take a lot of time, and as great as it was to have finished, it really did take up a lot more time than I thought. And obviously between work commitments and other things, my time is quite precious to me. So I don't know. I'll give it some thought. I might do another one. I did just see another. Is there any Lucy can have answered that one? Answered that one. How long did it take you to? Oh, were there any details that you wanted to include but came impossible to add? Not really. I think I got most of the details I wanted. Obviously, some of the much smaller stuff, like I said, like the anti-theft device, all the dials and little extra pieces, I didn't add on. I may well do a little sort of additional kit of extra pieces at some point, but again, I wanted to make a very basic model because I wanted something which, again, it would have been difficult to do it very, very hyper realistically. I mean, like I said, if you look at the front, where I've got the wheelbase and wheel bearings, it's very, very simply designed. It is just squares and shapes and things like that. So yeah, it's not meant to be hyper detailed. I would like to add some more details on there, but just for the sake of getting the base model finished, I wanted to concentrate on getting that done. The only other sort of detailing that I didn't do quite as well I would have liked was all the line detailing, the black line detailing, because she's got some extra sort of little curves on the decals and things like that, which I didn't do. But again, that's a paint thing. It would have been, it's something I could have done, but the yellow paint I originally ordered didn't turn up, and then this one turned up late, so I just had to get it done. It's I had to cut corners somewhere, so I did. But yeah, it came up really well. I was pretty pleased. I was pretty pleased with how it came up. How long did it take you to make? So in total, I would say that's probably about a week's worth of printing. But that's a week's worth of printing over the last, say, 2 or 3 weeks. Because again, other commitments means I can't have the printer going all the time and things like that. So yeah, it's probably about a week's worth of printing, give or take here or there. No, it's probably a bit less than that actually. No, I'd say maybe about 5 days, if that. Now I think about it, because bearing in mind as well that I've actually printed this in the lowest resolution that I can print in to try and save time to get it out better. So where there's areas, around the front here where you can see some sort of the print lines and things like that. Again, if you printed it in high quality, excuse me, if you printed it in high quality, you wouldn't necessarily get those lines. I just printed it in the lower quality, just purely to get it done as quickly as I can. What did I use for the glass at the front? That is just a simple piece of acetate, nothing special about that. If I was to give an example of what that is basically that is the same kind of clear plastic that is used on the front of a B&M box for figures. I haven't used one of my B&M boxes of figures. I've got lots of other spare figure boxes from non-Doctor Who things that I've managed to take apart over the years, which I've just used for that. And on the note of the windscreen, actually, that's something else I should mention. So in the files, there's actually going to be 2 versions of the windscreen available. There's going to be this version, which has got a sort of cutout area around the edge, so you can put in a piece of clear acetate like that. But there's also going to be a solid printed version, so the windscreen will actually be part of the print, and that's for so anyone who might want to print it in clear resin or clear plastic and things like that. So there will be options for people depending on what they want to do. I just did this purely because printing it in clear plastic, clear PLA, is clear PLA is temperamental at the best of times, so it was just easier to do it this way, and I prefer it because that means I've actually got a sort of windscreen in there. Um, did you consider anything about the roof cover? I did consider doing the roof cover, and it is again something which I might go back to in future and do a roof cover version, but I decided against it just purely because this is Bessie's more iconic look. I think it's the look that most people are familiar with. With the top down, and she does appear with the top up and things like that. But yeah, I just decided to go without it, just to again for the sake of ease and getting it out as quick as I could, and getting the model finished. But I may well go back and do a top up version at some point, so or at least an extra piece to do the top up on it. Um, did you also consider electronics, or was it always going to be like this? Yeah, no, I decided just to do with this. Firstly, because electronics is not my strong point, and secondly, it just would have been very difficult to do that, and it would have taken a lot more time to do that a um a perspective of printing, because obviously depending on the electronics you wanted, even just things like, so let's say for example, very very basic, you just wanted the headlights to light up. Well, I'd need to print those in clear PLA plastic. But now I'm saying that, no, I'd probably have to I'd have to print one. I'd have to make a resin cast to do it in clear resin, which I could then put an LED into, which I could then wire into the which I could then wire in. I would then have to put wire holes through the chassis unit and the whole thing. I would then probably have to find somewhere to put a battery, which would probably be behind the seats, which again would stand out and wouldn't look right. So, again, that's just off the top of my head. And again, I don't know a lot about electrics, but when you look at it like that, it just would have been really difficult to have electronics, in her. It wouldn't have been impossible, but it's definitely well beyond my expertise. But again, I'm happy just having the static model. I'm very much one for putting things on display rather than play. So I'm happy with what I've got. And again, if I had ever managed to work out how to do an electronics version, I would. But that isn't something that I don't think I'm ever going to do, if I'm perfectly honest. Just purely because I don't feel the need to. Does the Doctor sit in Bessie? Slightly. Again, I've covered that in the live stream earlier if you want to go back and see it, things like that. Is that the Time Lord Victorious? Yes, it is. I haven't finished it yet. I'm still working on it. I still need to do it. How well does it move? Again, her wheels do turn, but it's not really made to be, again, played with and moved along like that. As I said earlier, the wheels turning was just more a necessity of just how I made it. Again, I didn't, all I had for this was reference pictures. I had no sort of idea about what to do and how to actually make it work and where to begin. So that's why there are the inaccuracies and things like that, and there are areas where I cut corners. But it does the wheels do move. They don't move great, but they do move. Yeah, it's not without its faults, as I said, but it's one of those things that was it was a learning curve in many ways in terms of 3D printing. I think this is probably I've 3D printed quite a few things over the years. Can we see the dashboard? Already covered that in the stream. It's earlier on if you want to go back and see that. Third Doctor figures from your 3 Doctor series, isn't it? It is. Where was I? There's something. Oh, that was it. Yeah, learning curve. So it's been a bit of a learning curve in this, in terms of how I've made it, because I've done lots of complex builds over the years, but I think most of my more complicated builds, I've always had a starting point. For example, so the Time Lord Victorious mechanoids I made, I used the base models that had already been made by James Lee, so I had something to work around. The Time Lord Victorious Emperor Dalek, again, I had existing base models to kind of work from and work around scale. This was something which I had to start from scratch with. So even if I say so myself, I'm quite impressed I managed to get the scale as close as I did. But yeah, you know, it's one of those things. It's been complicated and not without its problems, but you know, I am pleased with the finished result. Even if it's not perfect, it is something which has come out a lot better than I thought it would. Than I thought it would. Than I thought it would fit in. Would figures like Joe. Oh, Joe as in Joe Grant. Sorry. And the Seventh Doctor fit in. The Seventh Doctor does fit in. Unfortunately, I don't have one to hand. Joe, I don't know. I don't actually have a Joe Grant figure. I need to get one at some point. But again, I think a shorter figure will fit in there better, just purely because the Third Doctor's figures, he's got quite long legs. I think he's actually one of the taller figures in the sort of Doctor's range. Obviously, next to the 12th Doctor, who was ridiculously tall in figure form for some reason. I'm very pleased with how it's come out. That is my catchphrase. Looks fantastic. Humanbill next. Again, as I've said in the stream already, I would like to do the Humanbill. It does already exist on the 3D printing Doctor Who site. That is hopefully one that I'm going to do next. But we'll see, because I'm already trying to work out where I'm going to put this one. So the Humanbill is definitely going to be one which is going to be bigger than this, I think. So we'll have to see. But I might I can think of at least one place that I can put this on display, and if I can sort it out right, I can have Bessie one side and the Humanbill the other. So that would be quite a nice thing to put together. Yeah, as I said, I don't really have a lot more to say about the model. It's I wonder what happened to the Humanbill. It does still exist. It is out there somewhere. I think it's in a car museum somewhere. Just changing the subject slightly there. Same with Bessie. She's in a car. Well, she was at the Experience for a while, and then I think she's in a car museum in the Midlands now, something like that. That was the other fortunate thing I had, actually. When I visited the Doctor Who Experience, I took quite a few photos of Bessie, so I had a fair bit of reference material to go from. Although interestingly, and I don't know why this has ever occurred to me before, it never popped up in my head. I always assumed that Bessie always had the black lining. She doesn't. The one that was at the Experience and the battle, in her battlefield form, whatever you want to call it, doesn't have the black lining. The black lining, I think, was from the Green Death onwards, and then obviously it was repainted. I think it appears in the 5 Doctors. And then I think that was the last time it appeared. She's obviously been repainted, redone at several points. And actually, talking about Bessie's detailing, one bit of trivia, which I didn't know, some of you may have already known this, it's probably quite commonly known, but I didn't, is I always wondered why the bonnet had been extended. And to cut a long story short, it was because the original engine conked out. So they had to replace it, but it didn't fit, so they had to extend the bonnet. So that's why Bessie has this strangely long bonnet. As I said, quite a few of you probably already knew that. I didn't. Just thought I'd throw that in there for anyone else who doesn't necessarily know. Another quote. I normally say I'm pleased, but I am really pleased. I mean, this really is. This is the thing. I really am pleased with how this has come out, because I really didn't know how this was going to work. I mean, when I started it, I genuinely didn't know if it was even going to work. I started it and I thought, I can't do this. This is way beyond my expertise. But I have done it. Even if I say so myself, I think I've done quite a good job. But this is another thing that I would just like to touch on about customs and etc. Is just keep at it, because the only thing that stands between you and a custom that you want to make is your own determination. I know that sounds like some kind of inspirational quote thing, but it's true. I could have sat down, looked over this, planned it out, and thought, it's not going to work. What's the point? But I sat down and I thought, this is going to be really difficult. I don't know if I'm going to do it, but I'm going to try. And I did try, and it's not accurate, but I've come out with something that I'm really proud of and really pleased with, and that's the thing. And even then, the 3D printing side of things, I've had conversations with at least one other person who I'm surprised she's not popped up in the stream yet. Where are you? but yeah, I was having a conversation with them recently about 3D printing, and she was saying, I have no idea where you're even going to start. Um, or you know, where to start with 3D printing. So um, it's just practice. It really is just practice. You know, there's there's not a there's there's not really anywhere to start. You know, there's not really any starting point. You've just got to jump in and work out how to do it. And even then, all of this, everything that I've made here, I've done using Tinkercad, which is a web browser based 3D printing bit. There's no specialized software. It's literally something that's available on the internet. You know, you know, you can. I'm not. You know, there's lots of stuff out there which which is much more complex and much more comprehensive. You know, to design things in 3D. And I have the utmost respect for people that use those things. I could not wrap my head around them. I'm at an absolute awe of some of the things that people make, and you know, and design with the 3D printing. You know, they come out absolutely spectacularly. But you know, for the very basic starters, you know, like myself when I started doing all of this, and even now to a degree, I'm still very much learning 3D printing. Um, you don't have to use specialist stuff. You can just use very, very simple web-based software, and this can be the outcome. Once once you get your head around it, it's not that difficult to understand. It's just more about knowing your. If you've got to know anything, you've got to know your measurements, and you've got to have an eye for measurements and detail. I think if you want to get things in scale, but again with 3D printing, things can be scaled up and scaled down at the click of a button. So if it's slightly out of scale, you can just scale it up. If it's too big, you can scale it down. You know, um, yeah, you know, I think I think it's been a learning curve. That's pretty much it. You know, um, but yeah, I don't like I said, I don't really have much more to say about the model. And I actually do have to go soon. I have an appointment. Well, an appointment. I've got other commitments that have got to be done on a Sunday. So there is my Bessie model. I hope you've all enjoyed this live stream. I've certainly enjoyed it. I'm going to try and get some pictures of her put up on my social medias for anyone else who wants to see them and things like that. But yes, thank you all for joining me. It's been very fun to do this. I would certainly love to do this again at some point. I'm actually planning on doing another live stream at some point in future, because I have gotten some lovely kits of things, uh, uh, kits of figures from Supreme Customs, who some of you may know on Instagram. They've been doing quite a few sort of Cybermen customs. They've done some new series Ice Warriors, all in 5-inch scale, all 3D printed in resin. Absolutely fantastic kits. And I've started to get quite a backlog of them, particularly Cybermen. So I'm thinking at some point in future I might do a Cyberman live from the workshop stream / general Q&A sort of thing. Just while I'm making those up, because it is nice to do these live streams, and you know, now I've got a bit more of an office space to actually work in. It would be nice to actually do something. So yes, that's pretty much it for the stream. So again, thank you all for joining. Thank you. Hope you've all enjoyed this video. It's weird doing the stream. I don't really know what my usual outro is and things like that. I'm rubbish without a script. But I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye. And I salute you all. Nearly forgot that bit. Mustn't forget that bit.